attention, please. We're going to go ahead and get started. If you want to move over to the center. I'd like to encourage everyone to come and take their seats if they can. We'll go ahead and get started. Yes, and feel free to grab your coffee and soda or whatever you need before you sit down. That's fine. Well, good morning, everyone. I am pleased to be presenting to you our final workshop of our Getting Back to Business workshop series. This is actually the third one in a series, obviously, that started in mid-September and was addressing the needs of our business community as reported in some early surveys that we did right after Hurricane Harvey. And we started with immediate resources, immediate needs, staffing, office space, small business, financing assistance, and legal and tax and insurance. And then we moved on last week to a discussion around marketing your business right now, as well as crisis communication plans, and talked a little bit about corporate giving and kind of the philosophy around corporate giving during these times and just in general. So that was a great workshop. We obviously have a few repeats in our audience today, so we appreciate you guys coming back, and thank you for spending time with us. Hopefully we're delivering information that you need. My name's Carrie Broderson. I am the Vice President of Events and Programs here at the Partnership, and one of the goals that I have is to make sure that I'm delivering valuable information to our members. And so any feedback you have, please feel free to share that with me. We will have a survey that goes out after this conclusion of this workshop to find out what the current needs are. So as we move and evolve and things have transpired over the last couple of weeks, what are the needs now? What are we missing, and what do you still need? So as a reminder, today's event and all of our workshops have been being live streamed. We are recording these events for on-demand viewing. So if you have to leave at any point in time, or you want to see what happened in the last two workshops, they are online. We have a disaster recovery site up, www.houston.org/flood recovery, or if you just go to our homepage, you'll be directed to that page as well. But with a live stream, an online and an in-studio audience, we just have one thing we ask of those that are here. We do have cameras around the room, so just be cautious of those. And you're welcome still to be able to get up and down. And if you need to take a phone call or something, feel free to do that, not to worry. But for those people that are here today, you obviously have the benefit of being able to connect, network with others, and that's also very important right now. Business connections are very important at this time. So we have a great lineup of speakers today. We have for the last couple of weeks. This workshop is on business development and growth after the crisis, and so what we're finding at this point are that people are the name of the title of the workshop series is Getting Back to Business. We're finding that folks just really need to kind of move on, get the businesses going, get new opportunities, and I think it is important for us as a community, as we learned and realized with neighbor helping neighbor during or after Hurricane Harvey, that let's support our businesses as well. We have wonderful businesses in Houston, and let's remember that as we continue to procure services and products that we have these great businesses in Houston. This will really help Houston's road to recovery as well. So today's program kicks off again with Patrick Jankowski, who is our Senior Vice President of Research here at the Greater Houston Partnership. And in the last two workshops, we have brought you this economic update. This is very important. We tend to deliver some new information at each workshop as it becomes available to us. And for those that are new in the audience, you'll see it for the first time. We also have 4 other great speakers, which I'll introduce during their topical session. So now I'd like to turn things over to Patrick and his yardstick and hear a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary. You know, I really like presenting. I look out here and there's so many people I know now that I've gotten to know well, like Ryan and Michelle and James and so forth. So I kind of feel like I'm not talking to partnership members, but I'm talking to my friends. So thank you very much for coming out. If you've heard me before speak about Harvey, I have updated some of the numbers, give you a little bit more insight. And the presentation, if you like, you can get it from, I believe, from Casey. She'll email you a copy of it if you like it afterwards. So when you're probably wondering what the yardstick's for, I'll show that in a moment. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing is we do have a webpage, as Carrie talked about, where we have information about Harvey. It's a real sore point with me. There's lots of bad data out there, lots of numbers which have been literally pulled out of the air or pulled out of the swamp. We've made a real concerted effort here at the partnership to confirm the data, to get true numbers. And if you see there where it says facts on Harvey, if you go there, you click on that, it's about 4 pages of data, and the data is sourced. I think we use Chicago Manual of Style for the footnotes. So if you want to go back to the source where we got the data from so you can double check us, but that way if you're trying to make business plans based on what actually happened out there rather than going to a number that was reported in the Chronicle or Houston Business Journal, you can go to here. In this case, we've gone to the agencies, we've gone to the sources that are responsible for gathering and reporting the data. So let's go ahead and get started. First off, I want to try to get you to think about Harvey a little bit differently than a traditional hurricane. We're used to seeing hurricanes on the left as a pinwheel where it spins around the center, and you got these bands of rain that move on shore, and they're like the little fans on the pinwheel. And as it moves on shore, gradually the amount of rain which falls dissipates, the winds dry down. Harvey was really more of a water wheel than a pinwheel, because Harvey never moved far onshore, and it did move back offshore. And what happened was, if you imagine a water wheel, as the water wheel turns and it hits the bottom of the stream, it picks up the water out of the stream, deposits it up into a trough, and then turns again. And as it continues to turn, it continues to drop water into a trough or to some sort of device. That's kind of what happened with Harvey. Harvey stayed so close to the Gulf of Mexico that it would spin, and Harvey would scoop water out of the Gulf of Mexico, drop it on Southeast Texas, continue to spin, continue to pick water out of the Gulf of Mexico, and drop it on Southeast Texas. So it's more a water wheel than a pinwheel, and that accounts for the very high levels of rain that we had. So this just kind of shows you the path that Harvey took, and you can see how it went in towards the hill country but didn't get all the way to the hill country, went back offshore, went along the Gulf, the edge of shore, and then came back on. And so you can imagine using that pinwheel, or that water wheel metaphor, you can see how that little green circle was the center of the water wheel and how it continued to drop water on Southeast Texas. This gives you some idea of the amount of rain which fell in the area. There are a lot of numbers out there. We've done some calculations. If you need just a general average for Harris County, the average amount of rain that fell in Harris County was about 40 inches, but it fell differently across different places, and you can see where it falls at Corpus Christi, Victoria, Galveston, and so forth. But I've got this up here because I wanted to try to give you some idea of what this meant. This isn't flood. This is the amount of rain which fell. So if you look at it this way, for those of you can see, this is the amount of rain which fell on Corpus Christi. That's the amount of rain which fell on Austin. That's the amount of rain which fell on Victoria. That's the amount of rain which fell on Galveston, just 23 inches. Let's go over here to Hobby Airport. It's the amount of rain which fell on Hobby Airport, just shy of 28. This is Bush and Katy, just over 31 inches. Let's go to Baytown, First Colony. It's about 36 inches of rain over the period. Let's go up to Taylor Lake, or Johnson Space Center. A little over 40 inches of rain. How about League City, where we saw such horrendous flooding? 43 inches. Friendswood, 44 inches. And remember, this is just rain which fell. Let's go up to Pasadena, 45.74 inches. Beaumont, 47.35. And Cedar Bayou at FM 1942, 51.88 inches. Think about it, that's the rain that fell. Gives you some idea just the amount of rain which fell on the region. And that defined what this event was. Harvey, unlike past hurricanes, Harvey was a rain event. It was not a wind event. And as a result, the sort of damage that we've had was significantly different. Go ahead and let you see. This right here, this is a screenshot from the map the Harris County Flood Control District places out there. And this is from Monday afternoon around 1 o'clock. And as you look, everywhere where you see a red circle with an exclamation point in it, that shows you that stream, that bayou, that drainage ditch was out of its banks. Everywhere where you see the triangle that's a little green here with an exclamation point, that means it was at the top of its banks. So on Monday afternoon of the hurricane, almost every stream, every conduit for water was either out of its banks or pretty close to being out of its banks, which explains the nature of the damage for this event. In a hurricane, you have wind that comes through and destroys everything. In this case, the water rose up out of the bayous, over the banks, and into the neighborhoods, which define this a little bit differently, and I'll talk to you a little about that in a minute. So you get some idea of how expensive or how costly was this. There are a lot of data out there, a lot of models which have been run. There are a couple of people who said it's a $190 billion impact. That's dramatically overstated. Moody's Analytics is just one of the firms we use as the partnership to understand what's going on, and some of the modeling has Harvey at about a $97 billion impact. They've actually rerun their model. Originally, they were reporting it as a $108 billion impact. Now it's a $97 billion impact. You need to understand this impact, though, it's not just for Houston, it's for Harvey and across its entire path. So during the storm, what do we see? These are numbers we have verified. You see, there were, in the state of Texas, there were over 120,000 people were rescued or evacuated. There are over 5,000 animal rescues, that's either pets or livestock. Shelter, at one time in the state of Texas, there were close to 35,000 people in shelters. A lot more people were in shelters because you get someone in the shelter, as soon as you get them in the shelter, you try to find some place for them to go, either to a relative or to a hotel or something. So a lot more were in shelters, but at the peak, we had close to 35,000 people in shelters in Texas. And look, the death toll right now, it's about 82. And if you want to look at the number of deaths in Harris County, it's 35. That may inch up one or two more as we get a little bit more information about what took place. So the source for that is the Texas Department of Public Safety and for the Harris County Medical Examiner's Office. Actually, it's called the Institute for Forensic Sciences now. So the issue about flooding and insurance. 50% of the areas that flooded in Harris County were actually outside a 100-year floodplain and even outside of a 500-year floodplain. And because they were outside the floodplains, people did not expect them to flood, so they did not have insurance. And that's the reason why there's so much damage out there, which is uninsured. And 83% of the homes in Houston do not have flood insurance because they are outside what we'd expect to be a normal flood area. I mean, this is where the greatest need is going to be, and this is also where the opportunity is, because this was an event which impacted homeowners and small businesses more than it impacted anyone else. This is a preliminary map that we've put together using some data that we've gotten from Houston-Galveston Area Council. Everywhere you see the red dots or the blue lines is an area where we had some significant flooding in Harris County. Oh, let me back up. You've heard all sorts of numbers about houses that are destroyed. About 7% of all housing units were destroyed. Single family, it's about 95,000 that had significant damage, and 13,000 multifamily. I'm going to work up. There is a number out there floating around that says there were 100,000 apartment units in the region that were damaged. That number is BS. I'm not going to use the full word, but Anybody who tells you that 100,000 apartment units were damaged, that is a bogus number. This is based on a survey from Apartment Data Services, where they've contacted over 80% of the apartment owners and determined, and this number may inch up some above the 13,000 as we get more data, but it's not going to be 100,000. The other is about the single-family homes. The way FEMA classifies it, there's the one called totally destroyed, meaning the house is not inhabitable. There's one that has major damage, which means the house is inhabitable, but the repair is going to take more than 30 days. And there's a category called minor damage, which means the house is uninhabitable, but it can be restored in less than 30 days. And so if you want just a general rule of thumb, there are 95,000, let's say 100,000 homes in the region that are uninhabitable without major repairs. And vehicles flooded, that's about 300,000 vehicles that were flooded, and not the 500,000 that's been reported out there. It is always a concern what's going to happen with these vehicles. I don't know what's going to happen with them, but I do know on the Houston Ship Channel there's a facility that all it does is shred cars, put them in a break bulk carrier, and ship the shredded metal to China to be melted down. I hope that's what happens to most of these. So some idea of what happened during the worst part of the hurricane. We had about 25% of the U.S. refining capacity was offline. About 50% of the chemical capacity was offline. 13 Texas Gulf Coast ports were shut down. And they had over 9,400 flights that were canceled. Need to let you know that of all the refineries that were shut down, they're all up and operating. They're getting back to their normal operating capacity except for one. With the chemical capacity, they're all coming back online. What's nice about this is that in the Houston region, what one chemical company produces is the input to another chemical company. And so when they all went down together, you did not have the bottlenecks or the buildups that you'd have, and they all kind of came back up at the same time. So you didn't have the same sort of spikes. There were some issues with refineries. There weren't places to put the refined products, but everything is just about back to normal. The Port of Houston and the Port of Corpus Christi have a few issues with shoaling, which means sand washed in and it raised the bottom of some of the channels, and the Army Corps of Engineers has issued some emergency contracts to get that done. The ports are operating just with some restrictions, and the airports are both operating at back up to full capacity. So I keep on talking about this, the difference between Ike and the difference between Harvey. Ike was a wind event. And because it was a wind event, that's what took longer for us to recover the business side of it. If you worked downtown and you tried to come downtown, what happened with Ike is it picked up all sorts of junk, it flung it around downtown and smashed windows in almost every building downtown. And you couldn't go back to work, one, because the streets were full of glass, and the other is you couldn't go into your office if there was no window in it. We had very few reports of windows being blown out or busted out. So that was one reason why we were able to get back to work fairly quickly. However, with the water coming up, it came into the neighborhoods and flooded out the homes, and it came in and it flooded out the small businesses that service those homes. This has mainly been the damage. It's mainly been confined to the neighborhoods, not to the business centers. Get some idea what the short-term and long-term impacts are. Well, CBRE has done a study, 40 buildings out of 9 million square feet. I think they've upgraded this number maybe to 46 buildings. You need to realize that 9 million square feet, that's less than 5% of the total amount of office space that's out there had damage in them. And the nature of the damage is not broken windows. The nature of damage is these were buildings where the water rose up and flooded their basements, flooded their parking garages, or flooded their ground floors. If they had their electrical systems in the basement, they were damaged. If they sent their elevators, cars down to the basement and it flooded, it damaged the elevators. So that's the nature of the work that has to be done on them. It's not a major, it is a significant repair, but it hasn't totally disrupted the way we do business. There's so much surplus office space out there right now. There's about 40 million square feet of either lease space or sublease space. And the landlords are willing right now to sign contracts for 3, 6, or 9 months to help people out until they can get back into their buildings. So once again, continue to emphasize, if you're trying to do some research or pull up data, be very careful of the dates, because CoStar, when they first came out, were saying that basically a fourth of all the leasable area in the region was underwater. We know that not to be true. I mean, once again, if you want to get good data, go to the partnership's website and call up that sheet, because we're working every day to update it. and we do have it sourced, so you can go back and check our source. It's not a number we pulled out of the air. So we have had some impact on the economy. This is the Purchasing Managers Index, also the PMI. This is a survey of people who are out there who, who knows best what's happening in the shop, but your purchasing manager, because I need to make sure there's enough inventory in to meet the customer's needs. We saw it dip down in September because things were shut down the last week of August, first week of September. We expect this to be short term and for it to get back up above 50, if not in October, definitely in November. You can see what happened with home sales. Basically, there were no home sales that took place the first week of the last week of August because we were all at home watching Harvey on TV. And the first week of September, we were all at home watching it on TV. And so we saw a drop-off in home sales. We expect that to start to recover, not with the September numbers, but with the October numbers. And if you want to look at vehicle sales are down. Basically, we lost the ability to sell vehicles the last week of August because everyone was at home watching Harvey on TV or dealing with it. We expect this to rebound. The impact that we see from Harvey is really, for the most part, a short-term impact. We'll see it over the next month or two, but by the time we get to the first quarter of next year, most of the impact of Harvey should have washed out of the system. Sorry, this is poor choice of words. Most of the impact of Harvey we won't see in the system anymore. So once again, I'm saying what Harvey has done, it's put a bit of a pause on our recovery. It hasn't rewound the recovery. So 90% of the firms in Houston opened up the Tuesday after Labor Day. And about 95% opened up the Monday following Monday. And right now, from best we can tell, about 99% of the firms are up and operating in some form. But 1 in 10 workers were impacted. This is based on some surveys we've done of our board members and some of the other surveys and just some of the anecdotal as we talk to people out there. When the job numbers come out for September, we probably see significant job losses. The Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas has actually done a modeling trying to see what's going to happen, and they're looking at the area from Houston to Beaumont, and they expect that area will lose anywhere between 42 and 74,000 jobs. They will start to recover those in October and November, and by the time we get to December, you won't see it in the data anymore. Construction will pick up in October as people need to replace their sheetrock and their carpet and their cabinets and so forth. Impact on energy prices is already beginning to fade. No significant impact on long-term population growth. I get people ask me this. People say, well, people aren't going to want to move to Houston anymore because it floods. That's not the sole reason why people make a relocation decision. Primary reason is they're looking for economic opportunity. They're either looking for a job or they're seeing it as a place to open up a business. And then there are other factors, family factors, quality of life factors, cost of living factors. That may be one thing that they weigh, but it's not the sole determinant. So we might see a little impact on population growth in the short term, but not in the long term. And the long-term impact on real estate development is still to be determined. I mean, there are lots of conversations out there. What do we need to do? Where should we be building? Where should we not be building? How do we build? And that will be ongoing for the next couple of years as we try to work through this. But it's still too early to determine what the full impact is going to be. So no significant impact on business infrastructure. As I said, the port, the refineries, the chemical plants, the airports, they're all up and operating. So it's not always about the data, though. One thing we're very concerned about at the partnership is the image this is projected. And you can see the economists didn't do us much of a favor there. You can see the floods. You can see Bloomberg Business Week. You can see the Daily News. Pretty negative. But the thing is, this is one image. But this is one of my favorite images right here. I mean, this is the New Yorker cover. I've got a few more to show you, but I love this image because here I am. I'm a native Houstonian. I'm a Texas boy at heart. I don't have my boots on, but they're in my bedroom. So it's hard to say this, but someone from New York actually paid homage to Houston. At first, this just looks like a cover of flooding, but if you look at it real carefully, what you see is it's first it's a typical two-tone truck. See, half of it's red, half of it's white. But if you look what you've got people rescuing each other, people in a boat rescuing people in the truck. If you look real carefully, the people in the back of the truck are wearing blue. So you've got your red, white, and blue there. And if you look at it, you can look at it carefully. You see it's a very diverse group. It's a multi-ethnic group rescuing each other. And you can even see the look at the background, those two buildings on Allen Parkway, they look a little bit like the Twin Towers. And you go up and look at the date, cover's dated September 11th. So in addition to the negative images, we've had positive images like that. Houston, you are the change our world needs to see. Houston, a love letter from Vogue. Oh, and Houston Strong. I think we're all embracing this. So, we did a good job of showing the world how we rescue each other. And now we're at the point we need to show the rest of the world how we rebuild. So with that, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Well, we haven't let him get away completely yet. Are there any questions for Patrick? No, he and his team have done a pretty good job of giving everybody a good update. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yes, Patrick.
Patrick, I heard recently that the Greenspoint Mall would be turned into a shelter. Do you have an idea how many people in Houston are still in shelters down from, you mentioned 35,000? Do you have an idea how many are still in?
No, I don't. It's the George R. Brown is back to hosting conventions. Most of the churches have are now sending them somewhere else. I would be guessing, but if I was going to guess, I'd say 1,000, maybe a few more than that. Not quite as many, but that's a guess. And once again, here I am saying, don't go with the guess, go with data. It's not really nearly the level it is. One thing, if I can, just real quick pitch, we're going to be doing an economic assessment of Harvey and the future of Houston and doing our forecast for 2018. It's going to be on December 8th. And we're going to be addressing some of this. We're going to talk about the growth trends we expect to see in 2018. As members, you'll get an email out of it, but I encourage you to come because there'll be a panel with people speaking. Scott McClellan from HEB is going to be speaking. Kevin Roberts from Transwestern is going to be speaking. Dr. Colasaduro from UT Health is going to be speaking. And I'll be sharing the partnership's forecast for job growth and sector growth in 2018. So just watch your inbox because you will get an email on it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrick. So I think I'll add to Patrick's plug for the December 8th event to also say that because we do recognize that a lot of our businesses, especially our smaller businesses, are looking for connecting points and networking opportunities. That December 8th event, we are holding a small business expo. And so if you are interested in participating in that, we can provide you some information. But I think we're going to do as much as possible to be able to promote the companies, our member companies, at some of our state of events as well, starting at the end of this year and then through carrying it through to next year. But anyhow, thank you again for Patrick's comments. And as he pointed out, he continues to update the information. A lot of that is on our flood recovery site, as well as he has a monthly economic outlook that he puts out as well. One other event that's coming up is Wednesday, October 25th. That's our Net Effects reception, and that's also a great opportunity to network and connect with other small and medium-sized businesses here in Houston. James Robertson is our next speaker, and we're very delighted to have him. He's a strong ally and friend of the Greater Houston Partnership. He's a co-chair of our business development program at the partnership, and also managing broker for Workspace Commercial Real Estate. And I know it's important that we have the conversation about how our businesses keep working at this time and what they need to do to fill those sales funnels. And James has that information for you today. Thanks, James.
Can I take this off? Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody. How's it going? Good, good. I am so stoked to see you guys here. It's a great turnout. I want to get a quick show of hands. How many people are here that have businesses that were affected by Harvey? Okay, keep your hands up. How many people here had a cash flow reduction of more than maybe 20% that they saw because of Harvey? Okay, so what we want to do today is I am co-chair for business development for the Greater Houston Partnership. I want to spend all my time on giving you as much information as I can to help you get your pipelines in order. So please ask questions. Okay, so first to start off, let me get the clicker here because my hands are full. So I don't need to remind you how impactful Harvey was to everybody here. I think Patrick did an awesome job, as he always does, on giving us the data, actionable data that we can use to share with clients to see the impact. But the story that's not being told as much, simply because we don't have the data, is how small businesses are doing. How businesses that are not global or regional, that have smaller balance sheets, that have maybe retail shops, that have to survive, right? So what's the story? From a small business perspective, most of my clients have told me stories of dealing with cash flow interruptions because of congestions, traffic. They can't get to a lot of the stores. You also have major institutions closing, schools, government entities, for example. One of my clients is a tutoring center. When the school shut down, he lost all of his students. So he had to stop for a pretty significant period of time. He had to lay out again how he was going to plan for the next quarter because of that interruption in business. You also have retail. Now, Patrick did a great job talking about office and industrial impact on the Houston market. Retail is the hottest sector for Houston. It's the one that's been the most active. It's the sector that has the gains. Unfortunately, we don't have the data yet to see how much damage Harvey did on the retail side. But I can tell you this. When you look at the corridors along I-10, where Patrick showed a lot of the flooding, those are retail stores that got hit. When you look on Northwest Houston, those are retail shops that got hit. Now, the regional and national chains, they have the business continuity insurance. They have the cash flow to be able to sustain that. But if you're a local bike shop and you may have had a rainy day fund that lasts you 2 or 3 months, how did this impact you, right? So those are stories that we're still getting, but I can tell you that businesses are failing because of that interruption, and the others that are not going down are struggling and trying to boost up their cash flow. So restaurants were particularly, that's pretty cool slide there. Now, restaurants had a pretty unique story when it came to Harvey because people are not dining in as much. Now, you guys know that Houston is one of the restaurant capitals of the world, right? We do very well with restaurants. That being said, it's still one of the most riskiest sectors. You can ask any banker here that if somebody asks you for a loan and they say they're a restaurant, good luck, right? It's tough. So restaurants already had a high amount of risk, but with the slowdown of discretionary cash combined with people not having the access they did before, restaurants are getting hit harder. Our business was even impacted with some deals that we were looking at acquiring restaurants where the valuation changed because the landscape has changed here. So these are real problems that people are dealing with. Court system, not a lot of people talk about that. When courts shut down, attorneys don't go to the courtroom. You can't throw a rock in Houston without hitting 2 or 3 attorneys, right? So there were some significant changes that happened when attorneys had to have some time off from hitting the courtrooms. Many mid-sized, some larger law firms had to make decisions on whether or not they were going to keep some attorneys on payroll. So these are real stories, not to mention the mom and pop or local law firms that are here, that could they sustain that 2 to 3 month interruption. Okay, so Harvey revealed some things to us. From a salesman's perspective, from a business development perspective, this could be an opportunity that reveals opportunities to grow. It may reveal weaknesses in how you manage your cash flow so you can change it, or it could be something that swallows you. It just depends on where you were positioned before and what you want to do now to move forward. And that's what we're going to focus on here. Okay, so cash flow is a huge part of that. Before we talk about charging up your cash flow, before we talk about building up your sales pipeline, the #1 killer for small businesses, I'd say to the tune of 82%, according to SCORE, is lack of cash flow management. That means money's going out the door that you're not accounting for. So you can have great sales, but if you're not managing your money properly, it's not going to do you much good. So cash flow problems, like I said before, is a big deal. So as we get started and look at our pipeline here, I want to talk about some of the things that you need to do to manage your cash flow quickly so we can jump to the sales part. So the first thing is lowering overhead cost. Now, I probably won't tell you something in this section that you don't already know, but you do need to ask yourself, am I doing it? Because a lot of small business owners that I've talked to were having issues controlling this. Now, when you're dealing with lowering your overhead cost, if you guys have leases right now, I want you to know that if your property was physically impacted by Harvey, meaning that your retail shop or wherever you were at, if there was a flood there and you can no longer habitate that space, there should be provisions in your lease where the landlord has a set period of time to rectify that problem, and if they don't, either they or you or both have the option to kind of terminate that lease. What you may not know is that even if your lease doesn't explicitly say so, you need to renegotiate terms whenever possible with your landlord, simply because you've had a change in business. Maybe your cash flow has changed. Maybe you need that to stay in business. So it's a negotiation. It doesn't mean that they're going to go along with it. It's a conversation that needs to be had, however. And I would advise you to talk to either your attorney or your broker and to find out what the market expects in situations like this. We've had several clients where we've pushed back 2-3 months of rent and flipped it on the back of the term, which gives them extra cash flow to invest in some of the stuff I'm going to be talking about, okay? I want to remind you guys, if you have questions, because I'm moving fast, just ask me, and I'll take questions from the virtual audience as well. So while we're trying to lower overhead, we also want to push back vendor payments. That's a big deal, self-explanatory. Bigger vendors like AT&T, some of the banks, they were allowing you 2-3 months deferment, right, on payments. So you want to call people that you owe if you need to, if you have a cash flow interruption, and push back that timeline so you can use that cash for sales and marketing efforts. This is just a quick example of one of my clients. It was a photo shop off of I-10 that had, they did a lot of business with students. And when the school shut down, they lost all that business like overnight. So they had pretty significant issues paying rent. Their rent was pretty significant. So we shared some advice on how they should talk to the landlord in order to get an abatement period, which is basically just kind of a timeout so that they can get their affairs in order and catch things up. I'm not going to go ahead and read that to you for the sake of time. Now, while you're getting payments pushed back, something you need to do that not a lot of people think about is to make sure that people that owe you money are paying you quickly. Okay, that's critical. Businesses die on the vine because they're not aggressive about managing their receivables. So this is a time to call your past clients. This is a time to call people that you may not have been in contact with as frequently. Hey, how's it going? How'd you do with Harvey? I want you to know I'm still here. My business is still active. And you know that product or service you bought from me, I still want that check. I need that check too, just like you need it. So you're pushing back people that you can. You're accelerating the receivables that you can get also. Okay, I'm clicking. All right, there you go. So securing access to credit is something else that's very important. Now, if you ask me my personal opinion, I believe that if your cash flow and your business is operating like it should and you know you can handle it, loans are great. It is possible to get a loan that you can't handle. For that reason, you need to take a look at how you're managing cash flow first. Now, something that any banker will tell you is that the best time to get a loan is when you don't need it, right? So take the time, if you're healthy enough to get one now, just for some of the ideas we're talking about later, go ahead and try to get access to that capital. We want to use it for sales and marketing, not to pay off bills, in my opinion, right? But get access to it when you can before you need it. Now, this is something that we don't talk about too much. When business gets tight and you're managing cash flow, you might have to let go of some deals you're working on too. There is such a thing as customers that are not a good fit for you. There is such a thing as customers that may be too big. If they're not profitable enough, if the margins aren't strong enough, you need to assess all of the deals on your pipeline to see if it makes sense for you to hold on to them. Same thing goes for employees, right? So I got my Mr. Millennial here. You know, he's listening to the podcast, trying to be a millionaire mogul while he's working for somebody. You know, so guys like this are great. They're innovative, smart. You know, there's a place that it fits, but if you're in a crunch, you're trying to get your salespeople in line, he's got to get on board. He's got to get active with his sales metrics. And if he's not, you have to be okay with making some changes. Slow to hire, quick to fire, right? So another big point is your dashboard. I'm not sure if, as a salesperson or business owner, you should have one. I can talk to you guys offline to show you some great resources on how to build a dashboard. But in short, it's just a process where you can measure your sales activity. How many calls are you making? How many meetings you're going on? How is your activity translating to revenue? Okay, that's critical for what we're about to talk about next. We have to be able to measure what you're doing. So, and last but not least, talk to your CPA. So he's Mr. CPA there. You need to talk to your CPA. If you don't have one, consult QuickBooks or whatever your financial software you use to just give a good once-over on where you may be leaking cash so you can stop that, okay? Control is paramount in this case. So now we're going to move on to the fun stuff. I wanted to get that out the way because that's housekeeping. So there's a new way that I hope that each and every one of you will look at sales. Harvey has shown us, for those of us that were impacted, that if your business had some significant problems, it just exacerbated that. It just showed you what was already beneath the surface. A 2-3 month cash flow interruption should not knock you over. But in Houston, the economy's so good, let's be honest. Sometimes we can kind of phone it in. We can just survive. I think what Harvey did was kind of give us a wake-up call, saying, are your systems in place? Now, when you look at the typical salesperson, I see them as hunter-gatherers, myself included. We go out there, we find our target, we take down game, and everyone eats for a week or two. All right? Then you got to go back out there, and you got to do it again. And if you're a business owner, same thing. If you don't have strong systems, your business life is a series of hunting, capturing your product, capturing the game, and processing it so you and your family can survive. Now, I want you to take a look at this guy here that's hunting down. I kind of see this. I picked this because I'm in commercial real estate, and that's kind of how we talk about our business, taking down big clients. And I'm sure our clients wouldn't approve of us seeing them as a mastodon, whatever that is up there, right? But that's how we like to visualize, our relationship. It's a challenge. It's one of the things great about sales. One of the things I like about sales, right? And I'm sure you guys do too. Now imagine a hunter-gatherer seeing a farmer, just this guy with some seeds and putting it in the dirt. I mean, what would he think about that person? What's this idiot doing? I'm out there, I got a ham hock on my shoulder. I'm walking back to the tribe, I'm all proud of myself, and we're eating for a couple of days, and there's this guy off in the corner that's planting seeds. And that's all he's doing. And so over a period of time, when right before wintertime, I'm still out there in the woods because I got to get more game. All of a sudden, his harvest is starting to come out. And before you know it, he's got a bountiful harvest there. He's got years worth of food in his silo, and I'm still out there years later, kind of tired, doing the same thing, okay? This is another silent killer of small businesses. We just get tired. Business owners get tired of the grind, of constantly having to go out there, and it seems like there's a never-ending cycle of getting ahead. I can't get ahead. I'm just getting enough to make it, right? Harvey, again, exacerbates that problem. So I want to talk about how to address that. So this is a pretty different idea for most people, but for big businesses, they've been doing it all the time. What I'm about to talk about is something that you've probably been a part of multiple times a day, and if it's done well, you don't even know it. How many of you here, by show of hands, know of a sales funnel? Okay, a lot of people. Okay. How many of you here have heard of funnel hacking before? Okay, not many. Essentially the same concept, right? But, and I do want questions if you guys have them here because I'm going to have to move quick. Can you tell me when I have 5 minutes left, please? So a sales funnel in the most basic form is having a vehicle, a series of either advertisements or emails or mail campaigns or phone calls at the top level where you are pushing leads down into this funnel, okay? Now, once you're into that funnel, you have to have a process that automates the relationship with that potential customer. You can't do it yourself. This is the planting seeds. It's impossible for you to do it yourself. And that's a good thing because we want your hands off of this so you can have some real growth in your pipeline. So you get your lead mechanisms in place. That's where you're drawing them in. You're going to use technology now. We have a great benefit for smaller businesses where a lot of advertising vehicles like Google AdWords, Facebook ads, YouTube, LinkedIn, they all have different ad platforms that have to be approached differently. They have their own way of doing things, okay? But once you learn them, and I suggest you start one at a time. Google, I would suggest first. Their AdWords here in my industry, office space is about $8 to $9 per click. That means that someone looking for office space on Google, if I want to buy that lead, it'll cost me $8 to $10 for that one click. That's pretty expensive. Now, there are some industries where the price per click is as low as 25 cents. Now, how impactful is that if you have a printing business? I don't know their pay-per-click numbers. I'm just throwing a number out there, right? But let's say you had a printing business. If you can buy a lead for 25 cents to get someone on your website, how much value is that to your business? So that's the concept I want you to think of. It does take money. It does take funding to do it quickly. To do it organically takes too long, in my opinion. Most of us want to see gains now. And that's why I'm encouraging you to get your cash flow in order so you can invest in these vehicles to see those gains now. So Google is one example. I talked about the social media platform as well. With Facebook, does extremely well with the algorithms. I suggest each of you spend some time there to look at how they gather data on their customers, and they can route people to your site. Okay, so Facebook's another one I think is very good. Google is at the top because it's the #1 search engine. You can't beat that. Facebook is second because a lot of your clients are still on there. I still would say YouTube, but I don't have the time to get into all of those here, but we can talk offline. But definitely look into those first two for now. Okay, there we go. So your website, this is where all of this lead activity is routed to your website. I want you to see your website as your personal salesperson. Now, 95% of the websites out there have a very poor salesperson. Imagine someone coming up there looking for a product or service. And imagine that salesperson, which is your website, saying, "Hi, my name is so-and-so. Would you like to know more about us? Would you like to know more about my CEO? Would you like to know more about my firm? I'm located on 290. Nobody wants to hear that. People want a personalized experience. They want to understand. They want you to know without them telling you almost what I want. They want the relationship to be automatic. And they really don't want too many people in their face, right? Not too pushy. A good website is going to be more intuitive. It's going to be very simple and direct. It's going to route people to an action, okay? Wow, my phone is ringing. That's embarrassing. Okay, let me get out of here. Okay, so as I was saying was, you want their personal website to route them to an action. You want it to be automatic, and it's something that has to be intuitive, okay? And that's critical. Now, when I say that, it takes time to get to that position. It takes money to find good people. And I can tell you some of our members, like Joshua Poetic Systems, he has a great team that can help you guys line that up. We have Carl, too. I don't see them here, so I'm not giving them shouts out yet. But there are members here that can help you with that process. Let me go back here. Now, this is a typical funnel, right? You got a home page here where you route people to the home page. They're able to browse your wares, so to speak. And at each different section of the funnel, you're tracking activity. How long are they on a website? What metrics do I have to gauge their interest? Based on your automation, how and when is it appropriate to follow up? Now, I'm speaking broadly here because there's a lot of different industries, and each one has to be tweaked according to that industry. So if you guys gave me an example, I can be more specific, but I'm trying to speak in abstract for now. So as you browse products and add to your cart here, you're able to guide them to a buying decision. Now, what's special about this process is when your process is automated through emails, through calls and mail, you're getting a relationship where you're preparing them for that moment they're ready to purchase. That's when you're able to step in. If your sales funnel is great, you may not even have to get involved at all. When you look at some of the major companies, they're not touching their customers. If you look at an experience with AT&T or T-Mobile or Best Buy, there's many times that Amazon is a great example. They're involved, but from a distance to where it's almost intuitive. They're making it so easy that you're buying and they're just kind of managing the relationship. It's possible for you as a smaller business to do that with this technology. You just have to spend the time to learn how to get it done, and you need to go ahead and find people that can help you set that up for yourself. All right, so here's kind of an email funnel that we use something like this. We have subscribers that we have people opt in. We also call, and when we find clients that we think would be a fit, we ask them to be put on that list. We're a little bit more aggressive. We'll ask, can I put you on this email list as well? And once we do that, because in our business, someone may not have a buying decision for a year or two. And in that time period, I need to keep up with that person in the meantime by giving them relevant information. So this funnel will show pretty much how many subscribers I have versus people that open the actual email, who's opening it, who's not opening the email, and if they're not, I can go ahead and remind them, hey, is this information valuable to you? Can I make it better? That's the kind of relationship aspect that you want to have in your funnel. But at the end of the day, you're routing people to an end result where you have people purchasing from you. That's what I want you guys to get from this. So one of the last bits of information I want you guys to have before I open it up to questions is to increase your activity levels. So besides the funnels themselves, okay, if you're not there yet, where you're not that tech savvy, you're saying, hey, look, I thought I was going to come here and hear, hey, make a bunch of cold calls. Let's get on the phones more. If you're expecting that, I tried to get away from that because I could tell you that, and yes, it'll work to a certain extent. It will. But it's just not, I don't know if it's sustainable in this day and age. It's not comfortable to have that kind of relationship with today's consumer. They're just too smart. I was talking to one of my colleagues here, John, about what it's like as a commercial broker calling clients. Most of the time, you're calling the right person at the wrong time, right? Or the wrong person at the right time. I forgot the last one. But that's how it feels, right? I don't want you to build your business model just on that. It's an important part. You still need to do it, but you can't sustain yourself on it alone. So increase your other numbers. Do you have an email list? Are you providing content to your personal website? Do you have content on a social media page? Okay, what is your brand like? What's your loyalty like? What are people saying about you? Do you have social proof on the internet that shows that you're a viable service? I'm going to give you guys a real quick example of a construction industry that I saw in our neighborhood after the flood. Construction doesn't have a problem getting business right now, right? They're doing very well. There are some people that do have some challenges, though. And those are people that are pretty new. They know that the business is out there. They're trying to take advantage of the opportunity. And I wanted to tell the guy, I saw him putting out signs in people's yards saying, hey, I do construction. You know, I get it. I applaud him for the effort. I saw some other people in his team going door to door saying, hey, we're doing construction, you need some drywall work. Again, I applaud the effort. But today's consumer, they're going to look in their social circles first. They're going to post on Facebook, who does drywall? They're going to look online and research the person before. So the guy on the street has a little bit more trouble, even though he's working harder, I think, than the guy that's smart enough to go online and to get social proof or a review or two, to maybe do a post on, here's some things you need to do to get your house in order after a flood. And those things make a difference. So I want to encourage you guys to up your metrics, up your activity in those areas. Okay? You still need to measure it to make sure it has value, but you still need to increase your activity there. Let me see here. I think that's... Well, it stopped working, so I guess I'm done. Okay. So now we talked about the client piece here and reaching back to your customer. So if you're asking people how Harvey was for them, past clients are a great place for future referrals. I wanted to make sure in this presentation we talked about the importance of referrals. If you are an established business, reaching back is one of the first places I would go. Check to see how they're doing, grow that relationship. They may have a referral or two for you there. So one of the last points here is non-negotiable standards. So we talked about sales funnels. We talked about building relationships with your past clients. One thing that's important is if you are one of those lucky industries like construction that's getting a lot of new business, it's important that you have understood clearly what parameters make a good client for you. If you're not clear on what size the client needs to be, what their credit needs to be, what type of work you want to accept, please stop and get that lined up first and only take on business that you feel comfortable and that you're excited about handling. That's going to keep you in the green. It keeps you out of wasting a lot of time and possibly getting bad reviews, which hurts your social proof. Okay. So that's my presentation, guys. I hope that you guys have some questions we could talk about with the time remaining. We have time for one question. So does anybody have any questions? Yes.
You mentioned relationship is automatic. What can you expound on that a little bit?
What, the sales funnel? Yes. Okay.
People want a personalized experience.
Yes.
Relationship is automatic.
Well, that's a good question. So the short answer is we want it to be intuitive. When you go to a website, you think about the buying experience for a customer. The first thing they typically do is go on a search engine to find out more about the product. When I say automatic, I want you to imagine experience. What's your business? Consulting. What type of consulting?
Financial information.
Okay, so let's say someone was looking for someone that did financial and information systems. They're going to go online and search for it first. Imagine them seeing your face on a video that talked about, top 10 things that your clients benefit from, because they're doing research. They're not looking for someone to buy from yet. They're doing research. So let's say they find your video. They go to the YouTube channel. They see several other videos that intrigue them because they're all about issues that matter to them. So now they're getting educated on what they need to do to get their financial house in order. They're starting to like your personality because they see you on video. They see you talking to them. Then they go ahead and click on your website. They see more information and content. You have a free offer. Hey, look, first hour is on the house, or some special incentive that draws them in. It's a trigger that gets their email address. That's the automatic part, okay? And we call that a splash page in most cases. So based on that trigger, you're giving the email address over. Now you have an automated series of emails after that. Hey, thanks for joining our list. We love our clients here. Here's what you can expect from us. 3 days later, you're checking in automatically by email. I just wanted to make sure you got everything you needed from the website. Here's some things we're offering now. Are any of these of interest to you? I'm just throwing stuff out, right? So this is the automatic part. Now, we have automatic emails up to a year that do this. Now, we're still involved. But the automatic part is it's going out by itself. And what we're doing is we're watching those conversations, and we're watching who's responding to it. We're watching who's opening those emails. And based on that information, we're able to decide who we want to talk to and who's not really ready yet. And we let the system kind of cook them, I call it. We just let them get processed that way. So that's the automatic part. Okay. Well, that's all the time we have now, but thank you guys so much.
Thanks, James. We're actually, because of the title of today's program, we didn't build in any breaks. My mistake. Let's go ahead and take about a 2 or 3 minute break. We'll bring our next presenter up, but give you a chance to grab a coffee and just say hello to your neighbor. Thanks. Go ahead and take their seats. We're going to go ahead and get started. This is a crowd that wants to talk. Casey, do you have lights or? Yeah. We'll have some time again at the end of the event for us to connect right after our final speaker. If those of you in the back of the room could take your seats, that would be great. So our next speaker, and thank you, James, again. James is part of our business development program here at the partnership, and it's a great opportunity for the sales kind of marketing folks to get involved and get connected. Our next speaker is from the University of Houston Small Business Development Center at Bauer College. Tim Scarborough is director of the U of H Procurement Technical Assistance Center, better known as PTAC. And in our first workshop, we actually discussed financing, small business financing, and counseling services. And it's still a very, very important topic for folks. It was not just an immediate response that we needed to address, but it's an ongoing response. But in addition to these services that Tim can direct you to, there's also other wealth of services that the PTAC office offers. So please help me welcome Tim Scarborough. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carrie. Good morning, everybody. As Carrie said, I'm Tim Scarborough with the University of Houston Procurement Technical Assistance Center. And what I'm going to share with you today is some information and knowledge about what you can do to position yourself to compete for government contracts in a disaster assistance type situation. I'm pretty open with the Q&A. Feel free to ask questions as we go along, or if you prefer, you can hold them to the end of the presentation. Either way works for me. Before I get into the specifics of our presentation, I think it's important to let you know who we are and what we do. University of Houston Procurement. When people read that, they normally associate us with the procurement office with the University of Houston, and immediately we start get asked questions about where are the solicitations? Do you have any solicitations? They send us their capability statements. And although we are part of the University of Houston and we have procurement in our name, we are not affiliated with the University of Houston Procurement Office. We are a federal program sponsored by the Defense Logistics Agency, and part of that program, which is a nationwide technical assistance program, we're required to partner with local agencies, and we do that with the University of Houston. So that's why we're proud to call ourselves the University of Houston Procurement Technical Assistance Center. So what do we do specifically? We are a specialty center of the Small Business Development Center. Some of you may be aware of the SBDC. They provide what I call general business advisory services. If you're looking to start your business, grow your business, need assistance with understanding how to write a business plan, marketing concepts. You heard some great information a while ago in the presentation prior to me about marketing. Well, the SBDC has a team of advisors throughout 15 geographic locations in the greater area that provide those services. They also provide a lot of assistance and have business relationships established with the SBA and local lenders, and can be a resource for you if you're looking to grow your business through a loan or some other type of funding that may be necessary for you. Now, the PTAC, as I mentioned, we're a specialty center. Where the SBDC does the general business advisory services, we focus on one thing and one thing only. That's government contracts. We categorize them into three areas: local, state, and federal. So, along with my team of advisors, if you have an interest in learning about or growing your business through the pursuit of government contracts, the PTAC is your resource. We service a 35-county area surrounding the greater Houston area. The only general requirement we have for eligibility for our program is that you must be a legally formed business in the state of Texas. And as most of you probably know, The basic requirement is a sole proprietorship in the state of Texas. If you meet any of those requirements, sole proprietorship, LLC, partnership, corporation, S corporation, you're eligible for our program. Now, as you can see up there, our services are no cost to you. We do require that you have an application on file, but once you become a client and remain an active client, you can go back to your advisor anytime you want to, and our services, our one-on-one advising services, are no cost to you. The only thing we charge for are low-cost workshops whereby we educate you in general business subjects that I mentioned as it relates to the SBDC and government-specific subjects that our team teaches within the SBDC training facility. About today's presentation, you're going to see that I'm going to reference a lot of organizations at local, state, and federal level. One thing you're going to learn real fast when doing business with government is that you're going to have knowledge on quite a few websites if you want to do business with government. In lieu of making this presentation chock full of website addresses and everything, what we have prepared is a disaster recovery assistance information document that we make available on our website that you see here. Everything I'm going to share with you today is summarized from that document. I would invite you to visit our website. It's right on the home page. It's a link. If you select a link, you'll download an extensive document that provides detailed information on providing disaster recovery assistance with federal, state, and local government. When it comes to doing business with government, being proactive is always the best posture rather than being reactive. I think that's a common sense statement that most of you are aware of, okay? Well, it's even more critical if you're looking to do disaster recovery assistance procurement opportunities. Your best chance to win and compete is if you're prepared up front. After Harvey hit, our office was flooded with phone calls and emails, not only from local agencies, but national as well. Everybody wants to come into the area and provide some sort of assistance, most of them looking for procurement opportunities. I can tell you that if you're not a company postured in advance to take advantage of these opportunities, you're already several steps behind those companies that are, okay? So I'm going to share with you some information today that will help you understand what it takes to put yourself in that position. Because the way government agencies work, it doesn't matter if it's local, state, or federal. As you might expect, obviously, Houston is a high-impact area every year. A lot of these government agencies have pre-positioned contracts whereby when something happens, contractors are on standby and ready to go for a wide variety of services. Now, having said that, in the weeks and months that follow an event like Harvey, there will be procurement opportunities as well that come up, okay? But even then, you need to be proactive and posture yourself to be able to respond to those opportunities. Because if you're looking to get yourself set up to do business with government, when an opportunity hits the street, one, you may not be able to get set up in enough time to respond to it. You're going to be behind the power curve. And for some of you in here that may be eligible for social and economic disadvantage certification programs, you won't be able to utilize those because those take anywhere up to 90 days and in some cases up to a year before you can get those certifications in place. And I'll talk about certifications a little bit more in a minute. Regardless of what the environment is, whether it's disaster assistance or you're just interested in doing business with government, the foundation rests on two things. One, registration. You must register with these government agencies. If you don't register with them, they're not going to know who you are, and you're not going to be eligible to win contracts with them. Doesn't matter if it's local, state, or federal. The second thing relating to the foundation of doing business with government are industry codes. There are two key industry code systems that government uses. One is called NAICS codes, North American Industrial Classification System. Those codes are used exclusively by the federal government. Every solicitation issued by the federal government is going to have one NAICS code assigned to it. And basically what these industry codes do, they identify the products and services that are being bought, and it's your way of telling the government the products and services that you offer. When you're looking to do business with the state of Texas, they don't use the NAICS code system. They use the NIGP system, National Institute of Government Purchasing Codes. Serve the same purpose, but again, they define who you are from a product and service perspective. When you get down to local government, it could be either or. It depends on the agency you're working with. Most of the ones at local government will use the NIGP coding system. Okay, so that's the foundation. Again, it doesn't matter if you're working in a disaster assistance opportunity or you're just looking to do business with government, you must be registered and you must enter all your industry codes. I'm going to go through a series of discussion points now, focusing on each area, federal, state, and local, and share some information with you as to how you can posture yourself to win the prime contracts. For those of you that don't know, there are two key types of contracts doing business with government. You've got prime contracts and you've got subcontractors. You're a prime contractor or you're a subcontractor, or you can be both. Just depends on the situation. Prime contractor is nothing more than the business entity that submitted the offer for the solicitation, and if selected for award, they are awarded the contract directly. Okay, that's what a prime contractor is. I'm sure most of you know what a subcontractor is. That's the team of subs that work behind the prime contractor to perform the contract. If you're looking to do business with the federal government, there's one database that you must be registered with. It's not required if you're solely doing subcontract work to be registered in this system, but we recommend you do, because you never know as a subcontractor where you may be presented an opportunity that's truly a prime for you, and you need to be postured to take advantage of it. SAM is an extensive registration. It can take you anywhere from an hour to 2 hours to get through it, depending on your comfort knowledge about what you know about your business and how the federal government does business. Oftentimes, we spend a lot of time with our clients helping them understand how to get registered in this. But there's one key thing I want to point out to you as it relates to disaster assistance opportunities, is that one of the areas that you designate in SAM is whether you want to participate in the disaster response registry. This is the list of contractors that FEMA and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers uses to establish who they can reach out to for disaster assistance opportunities. So as you're completing the SAM registration, it will ask you if you want to participate in this program. It'll give you two choices. Do you want to participate nationwide? Nationwide is pretty obvious. That means any disaster assistance opportunity anywhere in the country. Or if you say by geographic location, it'll limit you to 3 different areas that you could select. But again, if you're not registered in SAM, you can't win a federal government prime contract. Now, FEMA wants you to take an extra step. Their industry liaison program, and as I mentioned in the document earlier, I have the website for this program on there as well as this vendor profile form, but they want you to complete a vendor profile form and submit it to them at an email address they provide you. So they have an extra step that they're wanting you to take. Register in SAM, complete the disaster response registry information, and to complete the ILP program. Now, if you're looking for government opportunities, like I said, FEMA and the Corps both have pre-position contracts in place. So those are the ready teams ready to go, all right? If you're looking for those opportunities that come up, the new opportunities unique to each specific situation, they do exist, the federal government was going to post them on a system called FedBizOps, short for Federal Business Opportunities, www.fbo.gov. This system is primarily used to post opportunities that's going to exceed $25,000. What we recommend you do if you're targeting opportunities with FEMA and the Army Corps is a federal agency, so FBO does apply to them too. If you're going to target opportunities with these agencies specifically, set up search agents. Anybody in here familiar with FBO? You familiar with search agents? Okay. This is being along the lines of that proactiveness versus reactiveness I told you earlier, all right? FedBizOps is a system that you do not have to register with. If you choose, it's free, but if you register with it, you can go out there and do what I call one-off searches, okay? Look for opportunities. But that's based on your time, when you can sit down in front of the computer. How frequently can you do it? Can you do it every day? Do you do it once a week? If you do it once a week or once every 2 weeks, how many opportunities did you miss between the last time you did it and the current time you get it? That's what I call the reactive measure. There's nothing wrong with that. You could be successful doing that, but what we recommend you do is take the proactive step. If you register with FedBizOps and set up the search agents, and search agents is just a term that they use to define safe searches. And you can set up as many as you want for a wide variety of criteria based on your NAICS codes, keywords, some other criteria as well. But if you're looking to target disaster assistance opportunities with FEMA and the Corps of Engineers, then you could go in specifically and set up a search agent for those two agencies, and the emails will come to you at that point. That's the proactive step, okay? You're putting the system to work for you because now you have the system set up with your safe search criteria for the opportunities you want to see, and they are sent to you right in your email inbox. If you don't set up the search agents, again, you'll have to go out there and do one-off searches. FEMA also has an acquisition planning forecast system. This is part of the Department of Homeland Security, and there's several agencies on there that do acquisition forecasting, and this system is primarily set up for opportunities going to exceed 150,000. This is where you'll find a lot of these larger opportunities. I was out there yesterday, and most of them related in the million and up, some of these larger opportunities. And they're very broad. They're broader than just disaster assistance, but certainly it's worthwhile for you to go out there and take a look at these opportunities, because this is where they post. And now these will be posted on FedBizOps too, don't get me wrong. You still have that FedBizOps connection there, but this is their acquisition planning forecast. This is where you can see what's coming out into the future. And then that way you can go in and set your search agent up with FedBizOps, and maybe you look for that opportunity when it comes out. Or maybe you can contact FEMA or any of the other agencies listed on the website and start doing some marketing, promoting yourself to FEMA, to other Department of Homeland Security agencies if you're looking for opportunities. So certainly the acquisition planning forecast system is a viable system that FEMA uses to put out notices of upcoming opportunities exceeding 150,000. Now, when FEMA responds to a disaster situation, complementing the pre-positioned contracts they have in place, they also send a team into the area. And this is a team that hits the ground and pretty much is doing the small dollar things, okay? For this specific situation right now, they're all located in Austin. They didn't want to come into this area and take up hotel rooms that could be used for more important reasons after a disaster. They're all located in Austin. They contact us periodically when they have opportunities and they want us to promote these opportunities to our client. But these really are the small dollar items. Some of the things we've sent are small dollar commodity purchases, micro purchases in a disaster situation up to $20K. Small service type requirements that pop up. For example, they contacted us for some fencing around a facility, laundry services, miscellaneous commodities. So they do put a team on the ground. They're located in Austin. But they also do a lot of simplified commodity buys on a system called FedBid. FedBid is a for-profit company that has a contract with multiple federal government agencies. And basically what they do is they manage the acquisition process for these government agencies. Again, if it exceeds $25,000, it has to be on FedBizOps, okay? So keep that in mind. But when you see a notice on FedBizOps, it may not be uncommon to say, click here to see more about this opportunity or download the files, and they take you to FedBid. And FedBid you'll have to register with as a vendor, and then once you register, that's when you'll be able to download the solicitation files and take a look at it. So these are the key resources that are put together for FEMA and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers as it relates to prime contracts. We get a lot of inquiries about transportation support as it relates to FEMA opportunities. The General Services Administration, or GSA as it's commonly called, if you have never heard of GSA, they're a very large federal government agency, does a wide variety of things, but acquisition services is one of their core mission requirements. They do a lot of procurement federal-wide for a lot of federal agencies. And so they generally do the transportation requirements for FEMA through their GSA Center for Transportation Management. And you can see the various type of transportation services I've listed there. Again, as a federal agency, you would find these opportunities on FedBizOpps as well too. But if you visit their website that I have highlighted in the document I mentioned earlier, it'll give you points of contact. And that's what's important about knowing where these specific agencies are and how to contact these individuals. You're looking to market your company. You're looking to take another proactive step. Yeah, it's going to show up on FedBizOpps, but you want to be able to market your company to those individuals as well so they know who you are and what you do. Some situations you come across with federal agencies, especially as it relates to disaster assistance, there are a lot of emergency procedures that come up and they're given latitude to do certain things. In some cases, they may not have to post on FedBizOpps because they've been given a latitude, but if you've marketed your company to them, who's to say they want to include you on their individual list that they mail out of people saying, hey, give me a quote on this. They don't publish it anywhere else. They're just sending an email out to a handful of companies, and they're trying to meet their Rule of Two requirement. Rule of Two for the federal government means is that they're trying to get at least two people to compete against each other. So they will email it out. That's why it's very proactive for you to know who these specific agencies are and how to contact them directly. Your best friend when doing business with government, with any particular agency, are the small business representatives. They have a wide variety of names. I just categorize them as small business representatives. Their focal point and their responsibility is for that specific agency they work for. They've been hired to communicate with you. They are the individuals that we recommend you contact first if you're looking to market your business to a government agency. They will help you understand what I consider the two most important things in government procurement. One, who buys your goods and services, because if an agency doesn't buy them, you don't want to waste your time with them. Two, if they do buy your goods and services, how do they buy it? And what I mean by how is, everybody's heard the analogy, that toolkit, any buyer, whether it's local, state, or federal, has a wide variety of options of getting things on contract and procuring things. And in some cases, as I mentioned earlier, they have pre-positioned contracts in place. So if you're selling a good or service to that agency and it's available on a pre-positioned contract, you need to know. Because chances are when they get a requirement, they're not going to publicly advertise it to you on FedBizOpps or any other agency. They're going to go to that pre-positioned contract. So that's what the small business specialists, small business representatives help you understand within a specific agency. Who's buying it and how they're buying it. Subcontract opportunities. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers does a lot of work in partnership with FEMA as it relates to disaster assistance. On the Corps website, they have a program called Advanced Contract Initiative. And what they do is they provide you a list of all the pre-positioned contracts they have in place, as well as all the contact information for those contractors. Okay? Now, in some cases, some of the contractors have specific links right underneath their name where you can click it and they want you to fill out a subcontracting form. That's how you get registered with that specific company. Other ones do not, but still they have the contact information there for you to contact them if you're looking for subcontract opportunities as it relates to the Army Corps of Engineers. State of Texas. Any questions on federal before I move on to state? Okay. State of Texas. Texas Division of Emergency Management is a state agency that leads disaster recovery assistance operations. The two things you need to know about doing business with the state of Texas. I come back to the fundamental thing. One, registration. Now, with the state of Texas, registration is called the Centralized Master Bidders List, or the CMBL. All government agencies that you do business with make it mandatory for you to register with them. As I mentioned earlier, SAM at the federal government, you have to be registered to win a contract. The state of Texas is the only one that's optional that I've come across. And the only reason it's optional is because they charge you a $70 annual fee to register with the CMBL. They are the only government agency I've ever come across that charges a fee to register with them. But they do. What they promote with the registration is that registered vendors are the first look for all Texas buying agencies. So when they have certain requirements within certain dollar amounts, they go straight to the CMBL to identify registered vendors. Obviously, if you're not registered, you don't get that opportunity for the first look. The other thing they advertise with the registration is they will send you email notices of opportunities. It's not automatic. The buyer actually has to run a report from the CMBL and send it to you. The report is based on two things. One, your industry code. If you remember earlier, I told you that the state of Texas only works with NIGP codes. All right. So when you register with them, you enter your NIGP codes. State of Texas also has what they call highway districts. So when you register with them, you select the highway districts where you can provide your goods and services. Of course, if you can provide them statewide, you just select all of the highway districts. Some businesses we work with are more geographically located, so you select those highway districts. If they issue a solicitation that matches any of your industry codes in your registration and the place of performance is in your highway district, that's how you get included on their email distribution list for notice of opportunities. Now, the Electronic State Business Daily, same dollar threshold as FedBizOpps at the federal level. Opportunities exceeding $25,000 must be posted on Electronic State Business Daily. ESBD does not send out any notices. It's just a publishing warehouse where they post the solicitations. Again, if you want to get email notices for opportunities they put on the ESBD, you must be registered with the CMBL. That's the connection there. But if you're not registered with the CMBL, you can certainly go out to the ESBD and do those one-off searches, okay? Again, the dollar threshold for those are items exceeding $25K. We're often asked, because if you notice, federal government exceeding $25K, FedBizOpps, state of Texas, ESBD exceeding $25K, we often have a lot of companies that come in and say, well, where do we find those things under $25K? That's where it gets a little tricky, because they aren't required by law to publish it on these websites, and each agency you work with may have different procedures on how they handle those small dollar opportunities. But those small dollar opportunities can be important. Okay? A handful of small dollar opportunities can add up to a larger opportunity, plus they provide you value because they're helping you gain past performance, which is essential for doing business with government. So as it relates to those smaller dollar opportunities, marketing, that proactive outreach to those small business representatives, opportunities you get with Meet the Buyers, those are valuable for you as it relates to being able to understand where those small dollar opportunities are. Yes, sir.
What type of businesses do you recommend should apply? I know that construction gets a lot of opportunities here. Are there any other types of businesses that maybe are missing opportunities?
It depends on your geographic service area, okay? The federal government buys approximately $500 billion in procurement services each year, all right? They have a 23% goal mandated by law to where they give $115 billion based on that $500 billion goes to small businesses. Now, the federal government buys anything and everything, so it's very broad, okay? So if you have a wider outreach, potentially the federal government may present you more opportunities as it relates to doing business with government. If it's very narrow, like for example, we get clients that come in and say, I want to do business with the federal government, but I can't go out to greater Houston area, well, our advisors may show you why it makes more sense to do business with the state of Texas, okay, because of the opportunities. From a state of Texas perspective, again, the goods and services they buy are very wide and varied, okay? We're talking professional services. We're talking general services. We're talking a whole host of commodities, constructions, consultants, any commodity group that you can think of. So it's a wide variety of things from federal down to state. It's when you get local as to where you really need to do research and put together where your targeted opportunities are. Local construction, huge, okay, with generally most agencies. But they may not do a lot of the professional services, okay? What I mean by professional services, lawyers, architects, engineers, things along those lines. And then you have the next category, which is just general services, custodial services, transportation needs, things along those lines. So it really depends on what your geographic service area, if it makes sense for you at local, state, or federal, and then the opportunities are driven by that. But generally speaking, yes, construction is very large in all three areas, but across all three, there really is a very broad and varied opportunity for a lot of different industries, okay? Local. I'd already alluded to this just a while ago. If you're looking to do business with local, each agency is independent. Federal government, you have to register with SAM. Opportunities are found on FedBizOpps. State of Texas, optional to register with the CMBL. All their opportunities are found on the ESBD. Again, the threshold is exceeding $25,000. But when you get down to local government, each agency is independent. What does that mean? That means that you have to register with each one independently, and you have to market to each one independently. You have to understand, and this follow on to your question, we often get clients that want to come in and get certified, and I'll talk about certifications briefly in a minute, with every agency they can. So, for example, the City of Houston is a very popular certification. Well, the City of Houston, although it's big, they are somewhat varied in the scope of products and services they buy too. And so what our advisors do is try to show you the value of getting certified with the agencies that buy your goods and services. Because if you're getting certified with an agency that doesn't buy your goods or services, you're just getting a certification generally just to be certified, okay? So when you're looking to do business with each agency, it's independent. On our website, under the opportunities link, we provide some information on how to market your business to government agencies, and at the very bottom there's a procurement websites link. If you select that, it'll bring up a list of procurement websites for federal, state, and local in the general area here. So it'll provide you a single source document where you can go in and look at the specific local agencies, and then if you select their websites, it takes you to their procurement page where you can see how to do business with that agency and also see their current active procurement opportunities. Again, each of these agencies have their own policies and procedures. They have their own varying dollar thresholds where they do certain transactions, so you really have to understand how each local agency does business if you're pursuing those opportunities. Now, as it relates to disaster assistance, shortly after Harvey occurred, I contacted the two biggest ones in our area, the City of Houston and Harris County. Both of them, as with the discussion we had with FEMA, register, 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 okay? And then once you register, here's some information that we make available on our website. The City of Houston has a listing of current disaster contracts in place, which may be beneficial for you for subcontracting opportunities and active solicitations. So you can select the link and it'll take you right to what they're doing as it relates to disaster contract opportunities. Harris County, they have a list of contracts in place for debris removal and debris monitoring. Now, I only list these here because this was generally the #1 inquiry we were getting after Harvey happened, okay? So I contacted the procurement director both with the City of Houston and Harris County and was able to obtain this information. On that disaster recovery assistance information document that's available on our website, I actually have the contractor names that Harris County currently has in place for debris removal and debris monitoring services, as well as the information and points of contact, as well as for the City of Houston. How do you find the list of buyers within the City of Houston? How do you find the list of buyers within Harris County? So if you're looking, and again, I wouldn't, for those of you that don't do debris removal and debris monitoring, I just use those because those were the most demanding questions we had up front. Certainly these procedures would apply to you. If anything, you can contact those procurement departments. Like I said, the information's on there, and you can inquire as to whether they have opportunities for you. Certified. I've mentioned those a few times already. What are those? Those are the socio and economically disadvantaged programs that government agencies make available to minorities, women, and persons with disabilities. Persons with disabilities does include service-disabled, veteran-owned small businesses. Any veterans in here? Thank you for your service. But those programs provide you an advantage. One, reduced competition, especially at the federal government level. The federal government level has a set-aside program. What that means is they take projects, solicitations, and they reserve them for individuals who meet the groups. The key groups within the federal government are small disadvantaged businesses, which is represented by the SBA 8A program. You have the Hub Zone, which is not a social or economically disadvantaged program at all. It depends on if your principal place of business is in an economically depressed area. You have woman-owned small business, economically disadvantaged women-owned small business, and then you have service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses. Those are the key categories at the federal government agency level where you find those solicitations on FedBizOpps. It'll tell you if it says set aside for woman-owned small business. If you're not a self-certified woman-owned small business, don't waste your time, okay? So that's what those certifications do. They reduce the competition down. Now, from a subcontracting perspective, they provide value as well, because many government contracts will have goaling included, whereby the prime contractor wins the contract. Their contract has terms and conditions in there saying you must give a percentage of your contract's total contract amount to one of those certified firms. So take advantage of your certifications if you're eligible, because in disaster assistance opportunities, those goaling requirements are still there. When you see solicitations, they will have information there relating to that. The last thing I want to leave you with, there are a lot of companies that provide acquisition services, the same type of services that the PTAC provides. And when you register, as I mentioned, you have to register, right? Well, when you register, your information becomes publicly available and you become a target for a lot of these companies. And these companies position themselves through their website, through their email address, through the media that they send you. They come across as official government agencies. They'll even come out and say they work with the Small Business Administration or another government agency. And these are for-profit companies looking to earn your business. But the way they promote themselves is somewhat a little bit unscrupulous. One, they try to make you convince they're a government agency. And two, they make you think that the roof is going to cave in on you if you don't contact them ASAP. What do I mean by that? They'll try to tell you that your registration's incomplete, your registration's expired, you're missing out on this program. They use a lot of different tactics to make you think that you must contact them, because that's their number one goal, to get you to contact them. And their second goal after you contact them is to get you to pull your credit card out, okay? Because these are for-profit companies offering a service to you, all right? The services they offer to you are the same services that we offer free of charge, okay? We get a lot of calls from clients and non-clients who are contacted by these companies, and we don't mind. Even if you're not a client, if you want to send me an email that they sent you and say, hey, what do you think of this? I'll be glad to give you an honest opinion on what they are. Of course, it's your business decision. And if you want to do business with them, by all means, go forward and do it, okay? But we'll let you know what they're about, whether they really are a government agency and what their objective is. Yes, ma'am. You had a question?
Yeah. Situation where some agencies require you to have the registration was done in Bradstreet, and then they call you later and say you have to pay for this credit report and such things. So can you explain to me a little bit more?
Sure. Yeah, the federal government has a contract with Dun & Bradstreet to issue DUNS numbers, is what they're called, 9-digit number that is required for you to do business with the federal government. So I mentioned earlier that in order for you to be eligible to win a federal government contract, you have to be registered in SAM, right? Well, the initial starting point for you to get registered in SAM after you create your individual account is you have to enter your DUNS number. If you don't have a DUNS number, you cannot complete a SAM registration. Well, Dun & Bradstreet offers a whole host of other services besides just having that contract with the federal government to provide you that free DUNS number. So once you register with them, you may also get contacted by Dun & Bradstreet as well for their credit report services and a wide variety of other services that cost money, as you mentioned. The other thing that happens out of registering with Dun & Bradstreet is what I was just talking about earlier. Companies find you out there, these for-profit companies, and so you may be contacted by these for-profit companies as a result of obtaining your DUNS number, but you're pretty much stuck because you have to have that DUNS number, okay? Now, there is some, and I don't have the most current information with me right now, but there is some discussion underway looking at maybe doing away with the DUNS number or going to a different system potentially. But right now, you still have to have the DUNS number. And as a result of that, Dun & Bradstreet will contact you for their fee services that they offer. These for-profit companies will contact you because your information is available. And then on top of that, when you register in SAM, okay, your information is available there. So if these companies don't find you via Dun & Bradstreet, they find you via SAM. So they're getting you from all different angles, okay? They are not required. The only thing that you need to know is that a DUNS number is free, registration in SAM is free, and that if you have any question about any of that, contact me, okay? All right. Any further questions? If you're interested in becoming a PTAC client, this is our website. We have an application link out there. Again, our services are no cost to you. We do or are required to have an application on file. Okay? And if you have no more questions for me, that concludes my presentation today. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, thank you, Tim. Really, really important, really relevant information today, and appreciate your time. Again, his information will be posted on our recovery website, and perhaps Tim will stick around for a little bit after today's program for any additional questions. Next up, we have Brian Gregory. He's president of Aldridge IT Solutions, member of the Greater Houston Partnership, and you know, a tough situation we were all in after Hurricane Harvey, and really any post-crisis situation is did we do everything we could have done to prepare, and we found that there might have been some gaps in our business continuity plan. So Brian's going to come up and talk a little bit about that, and welcome. Thank you.
First, thank you to the Greater Houston Partnership. I'm happy to be here. Not always a fun topic to talk about is business continuity, but we're an IT services firm, and it comes with the territory. A lot of people don't want to have to plan for disasters, but one of the things that we're responsible for is making sure that our clients can continue business as usual when a disaster strikes. One of the things I want to talk about today is business continuity, that it's a life cycle. It's a process that you as an organization always have to keep focus on. It's not one of those things that you can put it in place, put it down on paper, file it away, and pull it out after a disaster happens. It's something that you always have to keep learning from, keep evolving, and keep going with that. So who is this guy? I'm Brian Gregory, president of Aldridge. I'm happy to take questions throughout the presentation, but if I don't get to your questions or you think of something afterwards, feel free to reach out to me directly. Happy to answer any of that. So who is Aldridge? We're an IT outsourcing, consulting, and cloud services provider. So what that means is instead of a company having an internal IT department, they outsource that to us. We have offices in Houston, Dallas, Austin, and Seattle. Our headquarters is here in Houston, and we serve businesses that typically have between 25 and 250 employees. So again, companies in that size, they struggle a little bit with being able to afford all of the resources that they need internally to run a proper IT department. So outsourcing that to us, we're able to provide them with those specialties that come along with the IT department. One of those elements is the Chief Information Officer. So as you know, a 25-user company can't afford, in most cases, to have a Chief Information Officer dedicated to their company full-time to bring that insight, that strategy, that planning that they need to be prepared for a disaster. So that burden falls on us. So again, I want to talk today about the business continuity lifecycle. There's a lot of buzzwords in the IT world. You've got backup, you've got disaster recovery, but business continuity lifecycle is just that. It's a lifecycle that starts with identifying your risk, moving on to identifying what the business impact analysis is, developing the strategy and plan, testing that plan, training on that plan, maintaining it, and once you get through all of that, you get to start right over again. So the very first thing is identifying your risk. So what threats are out there that you need to protect yourself against? I don't need to stand up here and tell you that hurricanes are a risk here in Houston and flooding, and you have to protect against all of that. But what I do want to bring to your attention is there's a lot more than that you need to protect your business against. I've been with the company for a little over 9 years now, and I'll talk through a couple of stories here, and unfortunately I got to see clients and friends go through each one of these. So the very first is fire. We all know someone that's been impacted by it, and it stays pretty top of mind, but what people don't think about is the flooding from the sprinklers upstairs. I had a law firm that was in downtown Houston that had all the protections they needed in place for fire suppression in their suite, but unfortunately what they didn't think about was the tenant that was 2 floors up from them. What happens when they have a fire? Their sprinklers go off and it floods their server room. Just one of the risks that you need to be prepared for. Theft and vandalism. Another story, have a client that we got an alert on a Sunday night. It was actually Easter Sunday, that all their servers went offline. We call our primary contact and he says, yes, meet me out there at 8 a.m. in the morning. We roll up at 8 a.m. and the front door's busted in. We go inside and the entire office is vandalized, to the point where someone had broken into the server room and taken all the hard drives out of their server, clearly someone that knew what they were doing, punched a hole in the wall where the networking cables came into the server room and cut those as well. So it was clearly someone that was out to do some damage to the firm and knew what they were doing. Cybercrime, obviously something that everyone's talking about right now, all the different ransomware that's out there. So making sure that you've got the protection in place to prevent it from happening, but if it does happen, and these criminals are getting more and more sophisticated, we're trying to stay on top of it as much as we can, but chances are you're going to experience some sort of cybercrime over the next couple of years, so be prepared to respond to that. Employee error. Whether this is a legitimate error or an employee that's actually going rogue. Had a CPA firm that had a partner leave the firm, and when they left the firm, they went in, deleted all of their clients' data, and took their clients' data with them onto the next firm. We were able, luckily, to put all of that data back, but also provide that to the firm so they could take the appropriate legal action. And last but certainly not least is hardware failure. While we're moving to the cloud and on-site hardware is becoming less and less and less, it's still inevitable, at least for the next couple of years, that you're going to have on-site servers. Servers have a lifespan, and sometimes they don't live throughout that lifespan. So make sure that you're being prepared to respond if that should happen. So once you've identified your risk, then we move on to the business impact analysis. So the very first thing you need to do is choose your team. Who's going to put this plan together? Who's going to help you identify the risks that are associated with it? Who's going to be able to architect that plan? And who is going to be able to document that plan? So the very first thing is identifying the key stakeholders in your business. I've seen a lot of businesses try to assign this to one person in an organization and say, here, go put this plan together for us. And I could do it for our plan or for our company, but I would still be short-sighted on, I don't know exactly what this department has to have that's mission critical or this department has to have that's mission critical. So making sure you develop that team so that everyone gets their appropriate input into the situation, and having the key stakeholders involved that can set the budget for the firm. Obviously, this isn't a free process to put in place. It's an insurance policy just like anything else. So being able to identify what your risks are, how much it's going to cost, and what that reward is going to be is critical. And I differentiate the two of who can architect the plan and who can document the plan, because a lot of times those are two very different people in your organization. The person that architects that plan is generally a very smart, geeky person, as we like to call them in the IT world, that may not be the best documenter that can explain what this plan is from the CEO all the way down to the lowest level person in the organization. So I want to make sure that the person that's in charge of documenting this is a good writer, a good communicator, can make sure that that gets translated down to everyone in your organization. Next is being able to sit down and identify what systems in your organization are mission critical. When we sit down with a client for the first time and we start through this process, there's probably a series of about 100 questions that we work through. I'll just go through a couple of them here. But one of the first things we ask is, what systems in your organization are 100% mission critical? And one of the first responses that I get is, everything's mission critical. Everything has to be up all the time. And then I tell them, yes, we can do that, but here's what it costs. And then we start having some other conversations, because they realize that the cost to keep everything up 100% of the time with zero downtime isn't feasible for most small businesses today. So then we go into what systems need to have the downtime minimized, and being able to differentiate the two, because obviously having something that's always up and always available versus something that has downtime that we need to be able to bring back online in a very short amount of time, the cost differentiation between the two is pretty significant. And then ultimately deciding how much is downtime truly going to cost for you. We step through a pretty extensive exercise here to understand everything from, if your systems are totally down, what's that cost you by the hour, down to if you can't get inventory out for a day, what's that look like? Or if you can't get shipments in, what's that look like? So understanding what those true costs are important to educate you on how much you need to put into this program. Also, when you're doing this impact analysis, you need to think about your upstream and downstream. I'm not talking about oil and gas. I'm talking about upstream, meaning your vendors and suppliers, and downstream, meaning your clients. I have a friend in my Vistage group that she thought she was ahead of the curve. She got a shipment out of all of her supplies on Thursday before the storm. Unfortunately, that wasn't early enough, because it got picked up. It was $1 million worth of inventory taken to a warehouse, and that warehouse ultimately ended up flooding over the weekend. So being prepared for all of that you don't want to have to think about a plan C, but be prepared for a plan C. Luckily, she was able to recover from that. She had some backup inventory and was able to get it out relatively quickly. Next is communication. It's great if you have an awesome plan, but if no one knows about it and you're not communicating it out, it's basically useless. So being able to identify in your plan how you're going to communicate, whether that's email. Hopefully you don't have emails still hosted on site. If you do, what do you do if that on-site infrastructure that's hosting your email goes down? There's text messaging softwares that are out there that will help you be able to load all of your employees' data into that system and automate those text messages alert that you need to send out throughout the storm, prior to the storm or after. Identifying what you need to communicate. So when you're in the middle of a crisis, you have to rely on individual people's judgment. Outlining the basics of what you want to communicate out during a crisis is important in advance, and when you're going to communicate. So whether we're talking about when the office is going to close, where we're going to work if our office is inaccessible, when we're going to come back to the office, all of that, just outline the basics, because when you're in the middle of a crisis, there's a million things to do, and we see a lot of what seems to be little steps that ultimately get missed. So next is looking at your physical and virtual resources. Your office space, for example. We run a call center. We've got to have someone that's on site around the clock, not only because our call center, but because we also run a data center for hosting servers and that kind of thing. So prior to the storm, we have a checklist of all the things around the building we need to check, make sure that we've got the appropriate staffing plans to lay out so that people know who's going to be at the office, how long they need to be at the office, and when Team B is going to come in to relieve them if and when they can access the office. Spoke about inventory. Make sure that you know what inventory you need to protect from any damage that can happen, but also what are you going to do if you can't get supplies in from your vendors, and how it's going to impact your customers if you can't get that inventory back out. And lastly, talk about IT infrastructure. So talk a lot about those buzzwords that we have in our industry, and our clients, when they first come to us, they think backup, disaster recovery, business continuity, it's all the same thing. It's really not. So backup is one of those things that we talked about a while back, where if you have local files, you back them up. Some people still to tape, some people offsite to some cloud service. But the problems with backup is you need to identify where it's being backed up, what's being backed up, how often and how long. And then what people don't think about is how long that's going to take to restore. So I met with a prospect the other day. They said, oh, we've got everything backed up to an offsite location. When we dive in to look at what that backup looks like, it's individual files that are all backed up, and that's great should we need to do an individual file restore. But if they would have local failure to where they lose the whole server, or we have to restore all of it, they're still looking at a multiple day outage, and that's if we have somewhere to back it up to, or restore it to, I'm sorry. So what we'd like to talk about with our clients is really what that business continuity service is. So for all of our clients, what we recommend at a minimum is that we have a local failover appliance in case that we have hardware failure. This is becoming more and more cost effective for the small businesses that are out there. If we would have talked about this just a few years ago, a lot of businesses that are in that 25 employee space or even below couldn't afford to invest in a separate set of hardware to do that failover to. But there's a lot of providers out there today that are making this more and more affordable. Also, we want to make sure that we have failover to somewhere in the cloud. So these are for your apps that aren't already in the cloud. Hopefully, email, you've got somewhere like Office 365 where they can take care of the disaster planning, they can take care of the failover that needs to happen. But if you've got a proprietary ERP or something like that that you've got to run locally on a server, let's make sure that we've got it backed up and we've got it to where we can fail over to the cloud should we need to fail over to that. The firm that I talked about before that had the theft and the vandalism that happened in their office, luckily we had just put this system in, I think only about a month before this actually happened to them. And we were able to fail them over to the cloud, and they were able to be back up and running by the first business day after the event. So it was pretty cool to be able to put that to the test and see it work. Talked about Office 365 and other hosted applications. This is where things are going. We're not going to have those local servers that have to run every single application and spin up a new server for every time you need to host another application. These are moving to individual hosted applications. QuickBooks Online, for example, while it still has some limited functionality, they're quickly updating their product to make that more useful to small, medium-sized businesses so that they don't have to run this stuff themselves anymore. And another key thing that may seem small is hosted VoIP systems for your local phone systems. We're seeing this right now with a lot of folks that were in Riverway that they're down for an extended period of time, and while their computer systems are up and running, if you call their main phone number, their phone number's not working because they have a traditional phone system that's connected to a phone server that's sitting in their office suite and internet's down, or they can't route the phones to their end users that are up and able to work, have internet access somewhere else. So looking into hosted VoIP systems is a very small fee that can have a lot of gain should you have to do this. So next, once you've got this system all documented out, you've spent all the time you need to step through every single piece of your business, is to test it. So what we tell our clients is we're going to test this system quarterly, and we're going to do a quarterly test restore, and then we're also going to do an annual disaster plan. So we're going to do a run through where we're going to fail you over, and we're going to make sure that your users know how to use the system and that it works the way that we all intend it to do. So if you're doing this yourself, make sure that you schedule these plans. We all get busy. It's easy to push it and kick it down the road, but make sure that you schedule it, because the last thing you want to do is wait till after a disaster to figure out everything that you had in place isn't actually working the way that you wanted it to. Then again, train. So we see it all the time where you put it in place, it works, but we didn't train all of our employees on how to use it. Make sure that HR knows that this is part of the onboarding process for when a new employee comes on board, because As luck would have it, the day before Harvey, we even internally had a new hire start 2 days before that started, or before that happened. Luckily, we got them trained on here's what you do should we experience a disaster. We had one. She knew how to access the data and the applications that she needed to access. Documentation, keep in mind, and please don't read. You can send an email. Don't assume that they're reading it. Make sure that they have access to it. If you know a storm's coming, resend the information. Remind them that this information's out there, and communicate. And then maintaining. So this is the perfect time. Just because we've had a disaster, we could have another one in 2 days from now. Because this isn't, again, just hurricanes or flooding. There's all the things that I talked about earlier. So anytime that you have an incident where you have to put this to the test, make sure that you take that time to regroup, sit down, identify what worked and what didn't, and what could have worked a little bit better. There's always something that you can learn. So make sure that you're being very diligent about doing that. Also, review after any business change. So anytime that you bring on a new site or you change a supplier or you put in a new application, don't forget about this plan to make sure that it's covered in this plan. And like I said, always ask yourself what needs to change. We update our plan probably once a month because there's always just something you think of, something that a new piece of software that comes out to make this more affordable. There's just always something happening to merit re-looking at that. And then again, update your documentation. The last thing you want to do is have that documentation be out there and it be updated a year ago. Any questions? I try to go through that a little bit fast because I know we're short on time. If none, again, please email me, bgregory@aldridge.com. I'm happy to take any questions that you have and share any templates or forms that we have to help you do this yourself or point you in the right direction of someone that can assist you. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. I know that we've had a lot of questions from our members and the business community on business continuity questions, but also services that they could provide to our other businesses that need to be thinking about that to make sure that it's part of their just everyday plan with their employees and so on and so forth. So certainly cloud-based services definitely helped us at the partnership get through a couple of weeks. Our final speaker, and very, very pleased to introduce Richard Ryan, with the director of the U.S. Commercial Service Houston office. If not daily, at least weekly, we're in touch with your office, right? And clearly, in terms of products here at home and services here at home, there might be, there might be a short period of time where things go offline, but there's a whole market outside of Houston that we need to be looking at as well. And I'll turn things over to Richard to talk about that.
Thank you very much. Happy good morning, mid-morning it is, I guess. There's a video I'd like to play real quickly. Could you do that? This video talks about my organization better than I can, so I think I'll, spare you listening to my Texas.
Many U.S. companies of all sizes grow their business by exporting products and services to buyers around the world. If you want to start or expand your international sales to one market or 100, we'd like to help. We are the U.S. Commercial Service, part of the U.S. Department of Commerce's International Trade Administration. We are the export experts, with a global network of trade professionals located in more than 100 U.S. cities and in U.S. embassies and consulates in almost 80 countries. This is unparalleled global reach that can help any exporting business. The key focus of the U.S. Commercial Service is to help small and medium-sized businesses, the foundation of the U.S. economy, increase exports and expand into new markets abroad. When U.S. companies succeed abroad, everybody wins. Exporting supports more good-paying jobs in America and U.S. economic prosperity. 95% of the world's consumers live outside the United States. We advise U.S. businesses on what these consumers need and how to market them, online, on the ground, and around the world. We provide valuable and easy-to-access tips, tools, resources, and market intelligence. We offer personalized, one-on-one export counseling and other services tailored to unique business needs, leveraged by a global network unsurpassed anywhere else. We help businesses select the best markets and sales channels, understand the rules and regulations, find qualified partners, connect with buyers around the world, and recommend ways to finance exports. We also advocate on behalf of U.S. companies bidding on foreign public sector contracts so they can compete on a level playing field. Our U.S.-based experts help develop export plans and strategies to get you started. Our international experts provide the market intelligence and connections to help businesses get that first sale in that first export market, or numerous sales in multiple markets. And every day, our in-country staff advocates on their behalf for easier market entry, lower tariffs, and even help unstick products delayed in customs. Our staff is dedicated to working with businesses every step of the way to see them grow globally and succeed in the international marketplace. Whether new to exporting or experienced global professionals looking for more market share, they can contact the Export Pros at the U.S. Commercial Service. Visit export.gov to learn more. Brought to you by the U.S. Commercial Service, part of the U.S. Department of Commerce's International Trade Administration.
I know everybody was impacted by the storm, but I'd like to take it uptown and let's think about where we could go from here, if that's okay with y'all. A few statistics, and I'm with Patrick on that. I pulled the statistics that I use from the International Trade Administration, from which we're a part of. So they're all comparable, and they come from the same database. So I'm not saying they're the best in the world, but they're comparable, which is a good deal. Here in the Houston area, this area has been the #1 exporting area in the United States for the last 5 years that I know of. It's about $97 billion worth of exports from here. There's over 12,000 small and medium-sized businesses exporting from this area. And when I say that, it's the Woodlands, the Houston, and the Sugar Land statistical metropolitan area, which is about 3 counties if you look at it. A lot of exporting. The main countries from here in Houston that we go to and we see businesses exporting to are Mexico, Canada, China, Brazil, and the Netherlands. Those are just the top, but everybody goes everywhere. Asia is a big growing sector or part of the world for this part of the world. Just to think about how exporting can help your country, all the exports in the U.S. are out of Texas anyway, create over 1 million jobs in the United States. That's here and in other parts of the U.S. So that's a big help for the country. So while you make money, you can help your country. You can't err there, I guess. I thought what I would do is just take a few minutes, and I don't want to take up a lot of time. And if we need to catch up, just tell me because I can. Just to tell you real quickly, not only is the Department of Commerce here to help you, but the state has recently started taking part in a program where if you spend money to go to trade shows overseas or you have some fees involved with those trade shows, the state of Texas will reimburse you for some of those fees, up to about $5,000. That may not sound like a lot of money, but when you start to look at going into trade show overseas, and a lot of times the state of Texas now has a booth at some of these shows, which means you don't have to buy booth space. About all you're in for is your plane ticket. I mean, obviously, if you're going to India, that's a lot of money, but it's nice to get at least $5,000 of your money back. So you can register through the state of Texas, and my offices, so we will help you with that also. So it's a good way to kind of offset some fees. So I wanted to mention that. You'll see also, I wanted to mention real quickly in your chairs, there's a booklet about resources for exporting. It's not just the Department of Commerce here locally that can help you. You've heard today about the Small Business Development centers. They're good for people that want to plan to export and you really haven't thought about it and you don't know exactly what it means to your business, but it's a place to sit down with someone and without some pressure learn about, do you want to export or do you not? The reason why I mention that in the office that I work with here, in the organization I work with, as you saw, we are worldwide. That's our strength. I'm not saying we're the most cerebral bunch around, but we do ride to where the cannon fire is. We're an on-the-ground business function to help you. For instance, just to give you an idea of the extent we'll go to help a taxpayer, there was a small company, that had a small device about this size. They sent it to a country that probably they shouldn't have, but they didn't know that. When it got there, customs wouldn't let it in. The company there wouldn't take it. They were about to get in trouble in the country, because a lot of countries where you go to and you take something where you shouldn't, you can get in trouble. A lot of times, if you're lucky, they just throw it in the ocean, or they'll start running the tab. They'll put it in a warehouse and start billing you. My colleague, who is a senior commercial officer, we got the call. We started talking about it, what to do. And he said, for crying out loud, I'll just go down to customs and see what the deal is. He went down there. He talked the customs people out of the device, brought it back to his office, dropped it in a FedEx envelope, and sent it back to the company. So we'll work to help you any way we can. I mentioned planning. In the office where I work, in the people we work with here, we work with lots of small and medium-sized companies. We work with big companies. Obviously, Shell has different requirements than some other small business, but we treat everybody the same. And it all boils down to us, do you plan up front, and do you know before you go? I like to counsel people, and hopefully that's what I accomplish here today. Casual exporting is very dangerous. You get an email. In the old days, you get a fax, and you decide, I'm going to sell something into that country. Well, you may or may not know much about the country. What if you sell something over there, and after all the costs involved are put into the deal, you don't make any money? I've seen so many smaller companies that get enthused about exporting that don't plan it, and they end up selling things, but a dollar sales is not 30 cents a profit. And overseas, if you're not careful, it can be zero profit. They're costing themselves money, and they really haven't figured it out. It's not because they're not smart. It's just because they didn't plan to know before they go. Rebecca, would you stand up just a minute? This is a very important lady. When I mentioned the small business development centers, she mans a lot of those and works with those, and it's a great resource. They're funded by the Small Business Administration. They spend time with people. My office, we get so involved with helping people on a daily basis that we're kind of harried. They can slow it down and make you feel more comfortable, I think. Not that we're jerks, but it's just that we have the phones going off and we have people needing this and needing that. And we refer a lot of business, whatever you want to call it, folks, to their service, because it's a place to go and learn things and sit down and think about it and know before you go. So I just wanted to congratulate you, because they do a great job. We could not do our job here without them. We're very small, and we would be overwhelmed. So they're the best. I mentioned planning and knowing before you go. In my simple West Texas mind, there's about a 6-step process. You need to plan where you go. You need to identify markets. You need to figure out how to penetrate those markets. Then, if you're a manufacturer, you need to think about your production capacity and how you're going to support your goods once they go overseas. A lot of people don't think about that, but it's important. And then there's logistics and financing. I'm not going to belabor logistics and financing. While they're a very important part of everything, and there are a lot of support in this town to do those things, don't not export because you're afraid of how to get something overseas or how to get it paid for. There's a world of service. There's a world of programs. Don't sweat the details. You can learn them. If I can figure them out, you can figure them out. Trust me on that. But where we can help you is, how do you identify the markets where you want to go? You're business people. You've done business plans. In my estimation, when I owned a business, the hardest part of my business plan every year was just figuring out how much I could sell. I could figure out how much I was going to spend. I knew what machining centers cost. I knew what lubricants cost. I knew what the CPAs cost. Those things, in my opinion, are relatively easy. But the gentleman that was talking about sales, it's hard to know how much you're going to sell. It just really is. And if you don't know that number, or you aren't comfortable with it, how do you know if you're going to make money? You don't. So I'm not saying we have the ways to tell every business to do that, but what we can help you with, think about this. We talk about market intelligence a lot. There's a lot of data out there, but what my organization can do for you is, let's say you decide, I think I really want to go overseas and I want to go to, let's say, Ireland. I'm Irish. We can talk about the Irish, right? And I really think my product's going to sell there, and I've researched it, and I've looked at it, and Rebecca's looked at it, and everybody's yes. Well, why don't we just get a description of that product and your business, who you are, why you're different, your value proposition, send it to one of my colleagues overseas and ask them, what do you think? They can ask other businesses over there, and you get kind of a real online, on-time thinking about whether your product could sell or not. To tell you real simply how that works, it's been, you know how in the news you hear about pirating data and you hear about pirating CDs and all that. And so one of my friends that was a senior commercial officer and just happened to be in the United Arab Emirates, and a lot of those discussions were going on, and he was on a phone call, and they were the people from Washington, D.C. were quizzing him about, you know, what do you think about piracy here and there, and what statistics, and you know, asking him all this stuff. He said, let me call you back in an hour. So what Amr did is he picked up a few CDs. He liked to listen to classical music and different things, you know, in his office, and he had some, you know, country indigenous music CDs and things like that. He just took 10 of them, went down to one of the local bazaars, sold all 10 hot, pirated right on the marketplace, came back up, put the call back, said, well, I'm calling you back a little bit earlier, but it took me 25 minutes and I sold 10 CDs. So, yeah, I think pirating is alive and well over here. My point there is that we can actually give you what we think is going on the ground right now, which I think is very valuable. I'm not saying it's always precise, but it's like calling GHP. You want to know something that's going on in this town. You think you do, but can they ask somebody else? And that's what we like to do. So that's like real line, on-time market intelligence. Now you've decided you want to go overseas. How do you go? We can help you pick the right channels. If you're going to be an internet company, that's one thing. We can even work with you on, there are a lot of services about internets, but have you ever thought, if you put your internet website together and you don't make your phone number look like it's an international number, can you imagine how somebody, again, in Ireland thinks? They go, well, they can't know anything about Ireland or overseas because they go 713 --. Where's the country code for that number? How am I supposed to get there? And there's a lot of little funny things that about your website and the way people can search it that you may not know but are good to know. We can help you do those things. So that would be like in the internet. What if you decide, you know, I need a presence overseas? Well, do you want to go there? Do you want to open an office? Do you want to find a distributor? We'll help you with all those things. We will help you put together how you want to do it. Let's say you choose a distributor. We'll put together a package for you. We'll take information and help you package yourself up so that we can go out in the marketplace and ask companies overseas who might like to do business with you. Put together a report, ask you to review it, have some phone calls, and then put together a meeting list. You fly over there, you meet with these companies, and you decide if you would like to pick that company as a distributor. That's a pretty good service. If you were to ask Accenture, Pricewaterhouse, the firm I used to bet for that, I don't know how much it'd cost. I bet they wouldn't get started for over less than $10,000 for a small business here because the government, believe it or not, you pay taxes, but for some reason the government, I'm not a long-time government guy, has it in their head that when they do something for a taxpayer, a single taxpayer, that they can't do for everybody at the same time, they have to do this thing called cost recovery. So we've discounted our cost down. So to do what I just said about working with you, putting together a schedule, getting you in country, we'll do it for about $900. I mean, I don't know, you may think that's a lot of money. It was to me when I started my business. But if you've ever done that before and tried to go overseas and actually find someone to do business with, it's not a bad way to go. Plus, they're vetted. And it's kind of nice. I never really realized this, but in a lot of foreign countries, people like U.S. goods and services. They really do. People in China order their apples from New York because they want to make sure they get a real apple and not one that's put together behind their back in China. People really like the United States. I mean, sometimes we're ugly Americans when we go over and we act, you know, obnoxious and we forget that, you know, it's their country and we should be more ingratiating. But be as it may, they love your products and services. So what I'm trying to say is there's a way to get overseas with not that much risk. If you'll plan before you go, you'll use the resources that are available. There's our offices, there's Rebecca, there are other people in the export guide, and we would love to help you because if you export, the jobs, it's really amazing, the statistics. Export companies pay higher wages than non-exporting companies. I never have figured it out, but it's true. The organization I work with, all the data that we use comes from the Census Department, because believe it or not, when you export, you have to register with the Census Department. Go figure. Every shipment gets registered with Census. So when my organization ciphers through the data, they got the real goods. It's not an estimate or something. It's real numbers. So they're good numbers. So yes. So if you think about that, I'm a business. If I can pay people more because I export, it's got to be profitable, and it is. It's wildly profitable. Some of the small businesses I've worked with, they really pick. There's a neat little business, too, I'll just mention real quickly, and then I'm going to probably shut up. One's a company called Air Tractor. They make crop dusters there in Wichita Falls, Texas. They happen to make the premier crop duster of all times. Since I've known them, I bet they've sold 25 or 30 into Brazil alone. They've sold them to China. And then what happened was, since they spray things and they carry lots of stuff, the State Department and Customs started buying them. Not only do they spray in Colombia, but they're weaponized. So they're like drug interdiction platforms, and they handle security functions in Africa. So here's this little company of about 150 people. They make the crop duster, everything except for the engine, right there. A great success. Who would have thought a West Texas company would get that kind of worldwide reach? Because it's not because they just fell into it. It just happened that their chief financial officer decided one day that they could sell those things overseas. And there they went, and there they are. There's a little company up this side of Dallas that makes a lot of construction type materials, but they also happen to make these real specialized pipeline coatings. The most profitable sector in Polyguard's business is their pipeline coatings that they sell overseas, and they're just filling their pocket. So if you pick well and do well at exporting, you can make a lot of money. Are there any questions? Anything I could talk to you about? Other than that, I don't want to take a lot of time. I just want to get down the road, but I don't want to leave you hanging. Nope. Yes.
I actually do have a question for you, Richard. We were looking at some data with regards to growth sectors here in Houston, and one being the construction sector. Obviously, because of the rebuilding that will be happening, but a lot of that information that was shared with us was that there were some materials that were being procured from overseas that we would see an increase in imports potentially in that area. Do you see any potential increase on the export side as a result of Harvey, or is it just really very difficult to get that information?
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't know how to get that information, but I'll tell you this: notoriety doesn't hurt, and people around the world are seeing that, Houston's strong. We're proud, and we get after it. Doesn't hurt. It just reinforces. Hopefully this is an answer. It's my answer. It's the only one. I don't know numbers, but intrinsically I feel that we got some buzz going. And yeah, and what's funny about construction that you mentioned in this town, there are large construction companies like the Bechtels and the KBRs, but I want to also tell you it's hard to go overseas as a service company, because if you're a real small construction company, who's going to take the truck overseas, you or mom? I mean, it's kind of a dilemma. But I've helped companies that are like 5 or 10 people that get an expertise in something that's very specific. I know one company, I'm an engineer by background, and it's hard to put a huge boiler in a petrochemical plant and start it and not blow the place up. And even though like Shell Deer Park or Conoco, they have lots of good engineers and scientists, they won't put in and start their own boilers, because they know they really don't have the experience to do it. Here's a small company that can do that. Bechtels, KBRs, everybody's coming to them. I want you to buy this huge Babcock Wilcox boiler, and I want you to take it here, and I want you to put it in, I want you to make it run, and I'm willing to pay you X million of dollars. So the first thing they said was, well, okay, and somehow they got to me, and they said, well, I guess we can just stay in Bechtel's camp, can't we, over there? And I go, no. The first thing Bechtel's going to tell you is you can't stay in their camp, because guess what? Their insurance company won't pay. Oh. So it comes down to now, I've got business overseas. How do I get there, and how do I go into business? And what we did was work through that with them about how they can, get their own protection, how they can get there, how they can comply with country standards. If you've ever had insurance quoted in Australia, you will absolutely, if you're a businessman, fall on the floor. The numbers of how much coverage you have to have are astronomical, but the price of insurance is low. So, you know, when I said, I thought the president of the company was like, I can't afford that. I said, no, let's talk to my colleagues over there and let's figure out how to get you there. The State Department got involved. It's funny about the government. When a small company comes to any part of the government and us and overseas, we want to make it work for you. But one thing we will do is if you can't make it, and I've had people get mad at me before. I said, I don't think you want to do this. I don't think you can do this. It's not that you are less of a person or anything, but I think you're going to absolutely, it's going to cost you more money than you know, and there's so many inherent risks to this, I don't think you should go. Maybe you should pick Canada as opposed to Ireland where, let's say, the revolutions are flaring or something like that. So we do that too. We want to make sure you're successful if we can. That's all I'm here today for. So come on. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. And as you can see, the Houston area has a lot of great resources and a lot of businesses that can support your needs at this time. And you can support each other. As I mentioned at the very beginning, I mean, Houstonians are helping each other to recover, and our businesses can do the same for each other as well. So I want to thank all of our speakers today. I really appreciate the time that they gave us, and all of our speakers throughout the series. We will, as I mentioned earlier, be conducting a survey after this workshop for everyone that's participated, as well as online. And thank you to also our online audience. We've had about 600 views of today's session. So that's great. We know not everyone can find the time out of their schedule to come to a physical meeting. So we hope to offer more digital programming in the future. But again, this is our final workshop. And if you have anything that you need from the partnership, there's plenty of us here today you can talk to, or just get in touch with us via email or our website. Again, thank you so much. Thank you for our speakers. Bye-bye.